What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another Solo Leveling Arise video. Alright guys, we are going to be talking about the Guild Boss. There are many good guides out there already, but I do want to talk about a couple different things that are going to matter quite a bit and what you want to format yourself to expect when you're doing this fight. So, first and foremost, let's get this out of the way. SJW, our boy Juno, the main character, is actually going to be your main support in this. You're really going to rely for most of your damage to come from your team, and he's going to be the one that's going to be providing that anchor for everyone to do as much output as possible. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to talk about skills, we're going to talk about weapons to use, and we're going to talk about your role and formats to go with. Okay, so first off, free-to-play players. This is going to be a tough one for you, okay? So not everyone's going to have this. I'm going to talk to you guys about some options you will be able to use. Remember, your goal as SJW is to do as much debuffing and buffing as possible to let everyone else on your hunter team do as much damage output as they possibly can. So first off, let's start off with skills. So a couple skills to note that are going to matter the most here. Remember, your DPS ones are going to matter a lot less this time around, and your main ones are going to be your debuffing ones. So first off, armor break. Using this wind skill is going to be highly recommended because it will increase the damage taken on the boss for everybody by 10%, 7%, or whatever the legendary one is, 12%, 15%, right? So very important one, guys. You definitely want to use this one as much as you possibly can in order to have that damage output push through as much as possible. Now the second one here, my recommendation, and also shout out to Gibran as well too for putting this together. He also had the same mindset here, is using this Fire Ascension break. My opinion, this is a great one because you can increase your power gauge increase by 20% when you cast it, and not only that, but you'll be casting ultimates way more often, right? A couple other ones that may be worthwhile is anything with a dot, but I don't personally recommend them because it's just not worthwhile in my opinion. So quite honestly, this one here is going to be your best friend in terms of building your ultimate the quickest and pushing out some damage as well to help out the rest of your team. So those are the skills I would probably go with personally if I were to choose anything on this list. Some of the newer skills are also out. Obviously, I don't personally have them, so I haven't had a chance to test them, but I'm sure there's going to be a few here that can also do really well. I just don't personally have anything to test it on, so at the moment I can't give you guys a good recommendation for the new skills quite yet, but I will focus on those when I get them. Okay, so those are the two skills I would focus on personally. Now let's talk about your actual blessing stones. So here it's going to be important to remember the main things you want to focus on is, again, supporting your group. So having yourself a good bloodlust is massive because whenever you hit the opponent, you're going to reduce the attack they do, but more importantly, you're going to reduce their defense, which actually stacks because it's a different kind of defense break with your shadow step. So this will allow everybody to hit harder. So this is a must-have for that run. Another good blessing stone here is going to be, where is it? The elemental one for you, obviously, if you're going to do elemental damage because he's weak to everything. Another really good one here is going to be We Are One. If you have more support players, right, it increases Sunjanu's and the support hunters attack, defense, and HP. So this is going to be a huge one. This is one of the new ones, by the way, so keep that in mind. And then anything here that'll help you pretty much survive, so the dash or whatever else, right? But really, those are going to be the main ones. I might be missing one or two, but those are the recommended ones I would say go with. Again, anything to support your units to hit harder, right? That's the main goal. So if we go further now and we look at the rest of this, weapons are huge. Now I know ideally you want to use the best possible DPS weapons you have. Remember, you're not going to do a lot of damage. It's been shown, it's been proven. So what weapons are best to be used here? Quite honestly, the first and foremost one is going to be your Moon Shadow daggers. Now the reason why this is so important here is because you're going to be stacking yourself Lunar Eclipse and the full moon, which will do a lot more damage on the opponent, up to 30% more damage if you can rack that up, obviously. So this one is very important. If you get an A5, you're even better off. This is going to be your number one most important weapon in this fight. The next one is going to be the Grimoire, right? I've got an A0, so unfortunately it won't work quite as good for me, but you can still do here. Whenever you apply freeze, it does do additional 10% damage that they've taken during that duration. Really where it becomes important is going to be A1. Now if you don't have this weapon at A1, this is when it's important. If you don't have this weapon at A1, the next one I'm going to recommend here, believe it or not, is an SR weapon. Again, remember, you are the support system, and the reason why is this the Frostbite Falcon here is going to be able to do a couple different things. Number one, it's going to do bitter cold winds, and whenever it freezes, it's going to apply the erosion effect. The erosion effect lasts for 15 seconds and allows every element to do 12% more damage. Remember, this boss is weak to every element, so you'll be doing 12% more damage for your entire squad, including yourself. Now, remember, if you get to A3, you can cast this twice now, making it a lot easier, and also decreases the cooldown by 3 seconds. And then finally, at A5, where it's super important, and most of us should have this at A5 at this point with the amount of summons we've done, unless you're brand new, your erosion can now be stacked up to 2 times, equaling this to 24%, which actually equals exactly the same as your A1 deep erosion here, 24% for 15 seconds. So you can get the same effect from this Falcon, and I highly recommend doing it because, again, you want to make sure that your units are hitting harder. Will actually be one of your best support weapons if you, like myself, do not have had really bad luck with the Grimoire. I've had horrible luck with this weapon, by the way. Now, let's look at the next weapon. Believe it or not, this weapon is going to be very, very useful as well. There's a reason why it's coming out when it did, and this brand new weapon that we got, the Juicy Grilled Skewer, is a free weapon that everybody can currently get. Now, at A0, it provides you a little bit of support, but at A5 is really where it shines. So let's talk a little bit about it, okay? So at A0, what it does is the Sizzling Grill increases team members' fire damage by 5% when within the area, but it also increases team members' damage dealt by 5% when within the area. So this is actually the important one right there because everybody gets this buff. Fire members just get an additional 5% on top of that, okay? So super, super important. Now, if you were to push this even further, let's just go further. When the Juicy Meat and Smoky Large Green instance runs out, the grill flares up again to deal additional damage up to 50% of the original amount, so you get it again. And then even further down, if you look further away, you guys can see here that enhances the effect of Sizzling Grill. This is the important one. Increases team members' fire damage by 10%, but it also increases team members' damage dealt by 10%, giving you a total of 20 for fire members and 10% for everybody else. So this is going to be a big weapon for you to use, especially in this fight. Now, let's talk about some of the hunter weapons that are going to make a huge impact in this game, or in this fight specifically for you and why you want to use them. So your team should ideally be Alicia, Sa, Mei Lin, Mireille, Wu, and Hansi Mi, and then the third team, totally up to you on that one. Min, Lee Bora, a DPS of your choice. Ideally, those are the units you want to bring in, right? Cha, let's just say Cha, okay? It's just Lee Bora, Cha, and Min. Okay, so let's say those are your teams. So if we look at the hunters' weapons, there's actually a couple weapons here that are going to matter quite a bit, especially for hunters, okay? So if we look at weapons here, we're going to look at the hunter weapons right here, and we're going to show you guys which ones matter the most. Okay, so let's go to look at hunters. Now, a big one here is obviously going to be Hansi Mi's. We talked about this one already in the previous video you probably watched at midnight that I dropped. I'm pre-recording all these obviously, so for the day of Sunday. So this one here, the reason why it's important is because you actually increase the damage taken by the opponent by 5% for 4 seconds. Every time she does any form of damage, this will proc. So there's no cooldown on this, which makes it pretty much uptime all the time as long as she's alive. And if you max it, you get it for 10 seconds instead of the 5. Not a big deal for that one, quite honestly. So the beauty of this weapon is at A0, it kind of does the effect you need it to do. She's constantly attacking. Even her heals attack, even her MP recovery attacks, all of her skills pretty much do some form of attacking. So this is almost up at all times. So having this is going to be very, very important, okay? Now, number 2, another weapon that's going to be super important, of course, is going to be Solid Logic here for Lee Bora, okay? So this one, target hit by the user's Strengthening Charm have both the damage they take from critical hits and their chance of receiving critical hit damage increased by 2.5%. If you max this out, you're getting a whopping 10% more crit chance on them and 10% more crit damage on them. So this is a huge one, and I highly recommend going for that, especially if you are a Lee Bora fan or if you have Lee Bora on your team. You don't want to be without this weapon. It's one of the main weapons that's going to push damage even further. Now, Eternal Slumber is another big one for Min. You guys can see here there's a pattern, all your support units, right? When the user uses Heavenly Blessing, the user and the team members' damage dealt by increase by 4%. So having that team there is going to increase this by 4%. Not to mention, Lee Bora has Charm, which does 15% more damage on the opponent for, I think, 15 seconds. Min has Punishment. Unfortunately, you can't disguise when you're in that guild boss fight, so it's a 5% increase. And then, of course, other units will bring in more debuffs. But these units are very, very important to bring in more damage for you as well, right? Now, if you plan to actually use Choi, Choi's not a bad option here. Choi actually does cause more damage burn, and then he also decreases the opponent's defense by 7% for 5 seconds. So this is another great way to add even more defense down on the opponent. So Choi is not a bad option there as well. And those are probably going to be your main big ones for the moment. Okay, so Hook, Line, and Sinker is pretty important as well too, because this actually does increase the attack of the main. So Alicia in this case in this team and decreases their ultimate by 5%. So more ultimates being cast. Super, super important one. I don't think there's anything else here that really outshines those weapons. Like Ice Witch, for example, just does more damage, right? So ideally you want that on your DPS. You don't want to miss out on that. Having your DPS as main weapons is super, super important. But I think overall, guys, those are going to be the big ones. Wu's also pretty important as well too, because he does stack damage dealt. But the problem is there's no break state for this boss that I remember. I think he might have a bar, but I don't know if it's considered break state whenever he drops from there with his little bar there, right? So couple weapons you definitely want to focus on your ultimate. So bring those guys to the battle for sure. Now, the teams, like I mentioned before, are going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to be your main water team, Mei Lin, Alicia, and Sa. Now, if you don't have to bring Sa, bring Ana Ruiz. Okay, and a shout out to Moose for talking about Ana Ruiz, because I've been talking about Ana Ruiz for a very, very long time. She's a great, great hunter, and especially because she brings fantastic debuffs like poison to the battle, right? So if you have her built up, you should definitely be using her. Remember, she does have poison almost on all of her skills, and that poison is going to make a massive difference overall stacking through the whole fight. So it's a great way to utilize a unit that nobody really uses, and not to mention on top of that, most of us will have her at A5 or up at this point in the game. So Ana Ruiz is a great option to bring to this fight. SM Beck is another one I'm going to test out very soon when I have a chance, because I do want to see how much his curse damage does and where he'll fall into the actual damage output, and where he's going to stand in terms of being useful or not. So this is another unit I definitely want to bring to the forefront to see how well he does in this fight going forward. And another decent one wouldn't be too bad is going to be Park, because she does also boost everyone's power gauge. So this is a unit you might want to consider bringing in if you don't have any good wind units, especially if you missed out on Hansi Mi. Bring her in and boost everyone's power gauge. Let people use her to do more ults, and that may actually bring out more damage for you than ever before. So a couple SR units here are going to definitely be useful. Don't neglect them, guys, just because they're SRs. SRs have a lot of value, and they always will. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.